Hi, I'm Ricky Frank. I've been in enameling for 37 years. I make enamel jewelry and I'm also a teacher. For this project, I'm going to take a piece of copper and fire some opaque white onto it to give it a background, and then I'm going to sift some opaque red on it, scratch through it, which is called Sgraffito, to create a little design. And I'm going to use a torch to do some torch firing so we can see right up close how the piece fires. So to start with, I'm going to take my piece of copper and heat it up. And what this is going to do is to anneal the copper to make it easier to give it some shape. So what I'm looking for is the copper to start turning slightly green. And there it goes. And I'm going to quench it. Just cool it. Dry it. Put it in my dapping block. I'm going to use my thumb. When I heat this copper, it's so thin that I can usually use my thumb. If I need to, I can take a little tool and rotate it. So I've got a nice dome here. And I'm going to start by putting enamel on the back, and this is called counter enamel. When enamel goes onto metal, the metal's going to heat. When the metal heats, it expands. The glass starts to melt and it expands. When the metal cools, it contracts. When the glass cools, it doesn't want to contract. So we create a stress because there's a layer of glass that doesn't want to stick to the metal. So by putting enamel on the back and on the front, it balances the stress and helps the enamel from cracking. So to start with, I'm just going to use some opaque white on the back. I'm going to take a screen, pour some on here, take my dust mask, and what this is going to do is to help keep me from breathing the glass. This is unleaded, so I don't have to worry about lead, but I don't really want to be breathing glass. So I made a few passes with the screen, giving it a nice thin even layer. Put it on my trivet. And I'm going to adjust my torch so I have a nice big bushy flame. Nice and hot. Let's move this out a little bit more so I can get under it. And I'm going to begin heating it. The first thing that's going to happen is the enamel is going to get slightly dark. And then as those grains of glass start to heat up, they're going to become balls. But they're not going to join each other, and it's going to look sort of like the surface of a sugar cookie. And that's what we're starting to see now. Now it's becoming orange peel, where the grains are joining, and it's very smooth and getting very glossy. And that's going to be called gloss finish. We're going to let that cool a little bit. Quite often when I'm doing a demo or I'm doing a lot of studies and I'm not worried about how the piece looks, I like to quench the piece just to cool it down. Most books will tell you not to do that because the pieces will crack. But we're going to fire this again so it's not so critical. So I'm going to quench it, dry it, and there's my coat of enamel, and this is going to be my counter enamel because the front is where the design is going to go. So I can put my dust mask on again, sift my enamel, put it back on the trivet. Even though that trivet looks cool now, it's still very hot, so I try to be very careful not to touch that. Light my flame. Heat it from below. The gases, when you're using a torch, will discolor the enamel, so I always try to heat from below if I'm using a torch. Also, if I was using leaded enamel, I would use some kind of ventilation system because the lead would be released in the firing and I don't want to be breathing the lead. With the unleaded, it's not that critical. I'm moving the flame, and there we go, nice and quickly. It's going right to orange peel, and I'm going to get it nice and glossy. And there we go. I usually let the pieces cool for about 20 seconds before I quench them. If I want to cool it, I can put it on the steel block and that will cool it down a little quicker. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get some red enamel. And this is going to be opaque red. I'm going to get this enamel out of the sifter, make sure there's no white in there because I don't want to get white into my red enamel. Take my opaque red enamel, and what I'm using here is opaque flame red 1880. Putting some in my sifter. Let's see if this is hot right now. It's still pretty warm, so I'm going to quench it. And as I said earlier, we're going to use a Sgraffito process to scratch through a design. So what I'm going to use is a simple little wooden tool that I've put through a pencil sharpener. This is a brush, and now I've got a nice sharp wooden point. So again, put my dust mask on. Sift the light coat. And now I'm going to take my brush Now, if I didn't like what I did, I would just simply knock it off and re-sift it. So what I'm looking for here is a balance between white and red. And I'm going to go ahead and fire that now. Now, the more I fire this, the more the colors are going to spread. So I'm going to try not to fire it too long. Firing it from below. See how the red enamel is turning dark. And I'm waiting to see it start getting, there we go, it's a little grainy right now. And I could leave it like that and have a nice texture if I want. So I think I'm going to do that. Just going to leave it as it is. Now this is still kind of molten. It takes about 8 seconds or so for that enamel to cool enough to where I'm not going to get my tweezers stuck. So I don't want to be touching it for probably at least 10 seconds. So I can pick it up now. And let's go ahead and put it on the steel block. And now as that red enamel cools, the color of the red's going to come out. So it's a gradual process. It usually takes a minute or so. And we can see it slowly changing color. So let's go ahead and just quench it so that we can see that beautiful red color. I'm going to dry it off. Now if this was a piece I cared about and this was the last firing, I wouldn't quench it. I'd let it air cool. But for this video, to speed things up, I'm using the water. Okay, so this is a project that we've done. We've used opaque white, fired with a torch on copper, and then I've taken opaque red, sifted it on, scratched through, which is called Sgraffito, and fired it. Thanks for watching. If you've got any questions, go to riogrande.com or call Rio, and they'll be glad to help you. Thanks so much for watching.